Welcome, welcome. Jamie Hernandez here, founder of Breakthrough Yoga Coaching Method, helping you bridge the gap between your spiritual practice and your business. So today is titled The Power of Prayer. Now, if you have a prayer practice, let me know in the comments. If you don't have a prayer practice, let me know in the comments. If you think it's just all airy-fairy, let me know in the comments. But the truth of the matter is, we're always praying, right? We're always praying. And there are different levels of prayer. And one is the unconscious. So basically, whatever is coming out of our subconscious, whatever is coming out, and it's moving into the field and the etheric field all around us. We have the unconscious prayer. We have conscious prayer, which is conscious, but it also can be semi-conscious. We have our deeper prayers, and I'm going to talk about that more. And we have our soul prayers and our soul desires. We have our collective prayers, and we have life prayers. And so I kind of want to go through all of those so that we can maybe understand maybe how has it been, whether we know it or not, integrating into our life. How has prayer integrated into our life? And at the same time, hello everybody. So let me know if you have a prayer practice or or what your idea and concept is of prayer and how it has affected your life or how it is not, because I want to dive into it today, because essentially we're always praying, and the seed of creation, of human creation anyway, is prayer. So let's get into the unconscious prayer, because unconscious prayer, the way I would kind of consider, the way I would look at it is essentially, what is it that you want and what is it that you don't want can sometimes be confused. Sometimes we think by knowing what we don't want, we get what we want. And I know that intellectually we're like, yeah, duh, of course, but we all have our fears. We all have our points of perception. So for example, I was with this medicine woman a couple of weeks ago, and she is this spiritual, deep, profound person who does, rituals, and she offers ceremonies, and she offers her dance and her body in poetry, and is deeply spiritual. But really super interesting, when we kind of had a chat and we were just kind of like having dinner together and everything, one of her points of perception, and it's not a judgment, but it's just interesting to observe, one of her points of perception was, well, if I get into a relationship, I will not be able to go as deep and profound in my work, in my poetry, in my life. And although that may have some truth to it, it is also, in my point of view, a prayer that is praying for something that we know we want, but at the same time, we're also praying for what we don't want. So, in this example, and again, I love her to death, and all of us have, these kind of unconscious points of view that just the intellect just kind of, it's just so, it wraps it in just such this very logical and intellectual and elegant way. And so the way I saw it anyway, from my point of perception, was, she wrapped her work, but wrapped like, okay, but if I have a relationship, then all of that is going to basically not work in the way I want. Now, could be true, but at the same time, what I was asking her, and we were playfully talking, and I said, well, yeah, that's what you don't want, but what is it that you do want? Because they're two different things. So the prayer would, if you really did want a relationship. If you didn't want a relationship, cool. Okay, so if you know, okay, I'm a person that is not wanting to have a relationship in my life. But the thing I heard from her is like, it would be nice, but no, I can't have that. I can't have that. So I said, well, but what do you want? And so then the conscious prayer would be more like, well, I would love a partner who I can be my free spirit. I can do my thing. I can be whoever I want to be in his or her or their, whatever they will call themselves, presence, and still do my work in this deep, profound way, and, you know, be off on my own when I need to be off on my own, or be in the deep, compassionate, like, you know, energetic communion when I need to. Like, something like that would be more of a conscious prayer. Yeah. So let me know in the comments if you see the difference there. And interesting enough, our unconscious prayers, it's exactly what it's called. It's an unconscious, that we don't even notice the point of perception. It's kind of like, you know, the common point of perception is eating salad is healthy for you. Now, it is a point of perception. And then maybe one day we're going to have, I don't know, some realization that for me, raw salad is not necessarily good for my particular digestion. Do you see? So sometimes we have these points of perception that are not always fully in alignment with what we want. Because let's say we want a digestion that feels at ease and that works well. But yet the salad, every time you eat the salad, because this is what sometimes can happen in raw foods, and I'm not saying this for you, but it is that sometimes a raw food can create gas. You know, it's just like kale is really great for you, but when you eat raw kale, sometimes for some people, it can create gas. So again, it's like, what is it that you want versus what is it that you don't want? Okay, they're two very different things. So that's what I mean by we're always praying, right? There is always these points of perception that we put out into the field that directly come back to us, okay? And just because also we know what we want, and this is why I call it semi-conscious, just because we know what we want. So for example, and there's deeper layers to this, but for example, let's say we want more money, right? Or we want a car. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting material things, okay? That's not where I'm going. But there's also, what is the intention behind that prayer? And where did that want come from? And so the other layers of prayer is where did it come from? And so we kind of want to start with a sense of clarity. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the practice of prayer, but first of all, you know, to get clear on what we want, okay, so knowing what we want is one thing, but to get clear on what we want, it must come from a clear channel. And from that clear channel, it's when it's this clear channel and we get it from a place where we have practiced emptying, and we've also practiced looking at the, let's say, shadow side of our experience, of our experience. Our points of perception are going to be seen through many different layers, right? So if we're kind of in a sense, a feeling of lack, and we are in this place where we don't feel enough or not capable or a certain way, then our prayer might come from the intention of fulfilling a need that roots from a core wound, okay? So it's a process of gaining clarity, and I'll go deeper into that practice of how we get to that place. It's a process of practice, and it's a process of observation. Because just because we also pray for what we want, we don't necessarily get what we want in how we expect it. Okay? So that's another important point of view. So it's clarity, and then it's the practice of, okay, so how do we practice, right? And then the last point is the observation, and then observing how we receive it. Okay, so I gave this an example of 1 year. This was like 9 years ago. I was praying, and I, you use whatever symbols you want to use or whatever comes to your mind, because it's all a reflection of what you attach things to. So I was like, okay, God, I want to know love. I want to know real love. I want to know true love. And, I know these are just words, and love is just so much more than the intellectual mind can understand. So show me what that is. I want to know, right? And here's the interesting thing. Life doesn't understand negations. So the other thing I kind of like probably unconsciously prayed for is I also don't want superficial love, romantic love. I don't want superficial love. Okay, so you might have already understood this, but it's like life doesn't understand negations. So lo and behold, I used to give these mom and baby teacher trainings, prenatal couples birthing workshops, and it was just so in alignment with me at that moment, because I had given birth to 2 babies, and the spiritual kind of practice of moving through birth and becoming a mother and connecting with the innocence of a child. It was just so in my zone of awareness. And so I gave these trainings, and I worked out, really a long time to kind of manifest this training. And, many of my students were like, had tender praise and appreciation for it. They loved it. They had deep experience. Some even got off their medication. And I'm not saying to get off your medication, but their antidepressants, because they just found different technology to sort of move through their postpartum. And anyway, so I was giving these trainings with all my heart and soul, and there was a student, bless her, who gave me this gift. She sat in the corner the whole time, and she was just sort of like, she was basically like that the whole time. Every time we were kind of did anything, she was just like, oh my God. Right? And so of course you could imagine my ego was like, oh, the thing that I worked on my heart and soul on, and like, how come this person doesn't receive it the way I expect her to, right? So here I am. I'm like, my ego's kind of grappling with this, and I'm disappointed. I'm crying. I'm like feeling the not enoughness, right? All of that, and I'm feeling all of that, and I trying to talk to her, wondering what's up, and she's like, well, it's not you, it's me. I just, and I just this whole thing, and I'm just like going into the drama of it all. And of course, hopefully when you go into these kind of dramatic experiences, right? These drama experiences, I wouldn't even say, I don't know, dramatic. Okay, maybe, but yeah, more dramatic than anything, I think. When I went down into that, or the humanness of it all, I sat back and I continued to go into my practice, because you can kind of go down rabbit holes, but then you go back to your practice, into my meditation, into my body work and energy work, and the clarity hit me. The reason why you went through that, life was saying, here, you want to know true love? Here, have somebody hate, and it's a strong word, but you know what I mean, hate your what looks like you and your work and everything you put your heart and soul into, just like totally be like, this is crap, essentially, right? And oh my God, the ego is being hit now. And then it's like, what I came to realize is life is saying, here you go. Here's the superficial thing you're asking for. You want people to like you. You want people to like your work, your heart and your soul. But here's real love. Somebody who totally not into you, right? How many times does that happen in our life as a human? Totally not into, when you are like trying to be this nice person and whatever, good person, spiritual person, and they're just not into it. How can now, life was asking me, well, how can now you love yourself? Ooh, that was now. See, I could have taken that lesson, and remember I talked about clarity, practice, and observation. I could have observed that from that point of perception of separation, because another thing prayer does is it starts to help you unify with life itself. I could have taken that, and my point of perception was like, oh, me against her, and good and bad, and like and dislike, and but all that, and not learned or received the prayer, because lessons learned are often the deeper prayer that is being prayed, and this is what I want to talk about. Okay, so the conscious prayer I'm talking about is something like, okay, I want people to come to the training, and I want them to like it, and I work so hard, and I want to be validated and acknowledged, and all this stuff, right? That's the conscious, semi-conscious prayer. Like, of course, we all want that. We're human, and I'm not saying not to want these things, but it's semi-conscious, because from a human perspective, we also have what I call survival needs, and the need to be part of the tribe, the need not to be kicked out, the need to be liked so that you are part of the pact, right? So the superficial prayer, I got what I wanted, right? I got what I wanted, but it was still semi-conscious. And under that semi-conscious, hi Olga, right? Hi Diane, hi Kampha. Under that semi-conscious prayer was my deeper prayer. Life giving me the experience so gracefully as it does, right? Or in your face as it does. Letting me know, you want to know real love? Here it is. Here's the practice. So what's really important to understand, okay, so I talked about unconscious prayer. I talked about conscious yet semi-conscious prayer, which is more on a human level, like I want, the things that we kind of want as humans in order to survive. And then the deeper prayer, which is more often in line with, I would say, your soul. Okay, the kind of universal kind of truths that are trying to move through us as humans. And the other thing that we want to start to understand about prayer is that prayers do not come without ramifications. Okay, so whether we get an unconscious prayer, a conscious prayer, a deeper prayer, a soul prayer, a universal prayer, a collective prayer, a life prayer being answered, it is not without ramifications. So, for example, if I go back to my medicine woman who I adore deeply, who, if she decides to call in the one who's going to support her in her lifestyle and her work and her spiritual practice, it is not without ramifications. It doesn't mean, yes, it will be called in, but again, clarity, practice, observation. It doesn't mean that both human beings are not going to need to still practice and work at building the creation, the prayer that they're building. Does that make sense? Or like just on a very practical level, I've always prayed for this beautiful house that I have right now and these beautiful floors and all this. But it's not without ramification. It doesn't mean that I have not spent like my blood, sweat, tears, money, emotions building this. Do you see what I'm saying? So whatever you pray for on a spiritual level, on a physical level, on a mental level, it is not without ramification. So that's why observation is such an important part of it. All of those things, practice and clarity, practice and observation. Okay? So let me get into I talked a little bit about deeper prayers, and I'll talk a little bit about soul prayers. Now, for me, the way this kind of shows up this showed up in my life, and I think it shows up because we talked about prayers being developing a relationship with life and unifying that experience. So from the etheric, from the unseen realm, merging and having a container, because that's what it is. Prayer is a container for spirit to come in, and spirit needs a container. The first container and vessel is your body, right? So you have a body container. Then the way you bring your prayer down, and you bring spirit, because think about it, okay? A human body with an alive spirit is very different from a body that the spirit has left. Okay? You can see the difference there. So my spirit is alive right now. When my spirit leaves this body, my body will be functioning very differently. It will start to be decaying and everything like that, right? So spirit needs a container here on the 3D realm, okay? So before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about soul's desires. Now, and so I talked a little bit about relationships. So my relationship with my father is an alcoholic. And, of course, you can imagine how that has affected my relationship with him in very deep ways, and that created grooves in our patterning together, and sort of the wounds that I kind of occurred and had to heal and transform. But here's our soul's contract. And for years and years and years, there's so many layers to this. So many years I just hated him, and I couldn't understand his actions and his behaviors and all this. There are so many conscious prayers of praying for him to sort of be different. Okay, conscious, remember, / semi-conscious. That's the human realm. Right, that's our need to survive, because my need to survive, right, as a young child, some of those survival needs were not being met because I had this alcoholic father, and of course my emotional needs and all that. But from a soul's perspective, the very fact that I had such and all of us have these types of relationships where it's so sticky, and so there's so much healing and transformation to kind of move through. And I was constantly seeking the answer. Why is this relationship it is the way it is? In a moment of meditation, in a moment of practice, what came to me, so here's the clarity, is that your father is a spiritual practitioner. It's just that he came down not remembering his light on purpose, so that you can fulfill your journey here on earth in this kind of spiritual path, whatever we want to call it, right? It's like, I don't think there's division, and I start to realize, because of this unifying reality that I start to see upon our relationship, is that both of us are spiritual. From the soul level, we both decided, okay, cool, you'll be like the drunk effed up one, and I'll be the lost soul that's trying to seek and find her way, and be overly sensitive and empathic, and just go through a lot of anxiety. Like, we'll play those roles. Because here's the thing, when we're in prayer, we're always trying to get to the holy. And the holy is like this. One definition is like this: consecrated, holy, blessed place. And the definition of consecrated is what we deem holy, what we deem sacred. In a divided type of consciousness, right? Which is what happens kind of when we're a human form, is that this is good and this is bad. He's the bad one and I'm the good one, right? He did this to me and I'm the victim, right? In a unity consciousness, we start to see everything more from that soul perspective, right? Where what's the soul's prayer? So our soul's prayer is, okay, we're going to go down, deep down in the human kind of dark cave, rabbit hole of suffering and emotions and trauma. We're going to go down there so that we can emerge and start to realize, or I anyway start to realize, what I deem holy is not this or that. It's not me or him. It's actually everything. Everything is holy. And so prayer is our capacity right now to hold and have a container for what we deem sacred. And in truth, life, everything is sacred. But we can't, here's the thing about being human, we can't go up into the light and just be in the holy sacredness. Just kind of how it works. I don't know why. Just kind of how it works as a human, without going into the depths of our darkness. It's kind of how it works, right? So again, what is it? Clarity, practice, and observation, right? And so I'm going to come back to this word, consecrated, what we deem holy, and concentration. When we practice meditation, one of the foundations of meditation is concentration, right? The ability to be here and concentrate. In, out, in, out. And it's a practice, because sometimes you're in, out. Oh, what do I have to do again? In, out. Oh my God, this itch. In, out. Oh, I have to do, like it's a practice, right? So I'm going to start talking about now the practice of meditation, or the practice of prayer. It begins with, I already mentioned container, and the first container is your prayer, is your body. And your body is your first temple. So when we talk about your sacred temple, or what I call your sacred body temple, the practice is entering that sacred temple, literally, physically. So when we enter a temple, a physical temple, let's just say, in that temple, we don't always feel so holy, right? We enter a temple with still all of our SHIT, with all of our baggage, with all of our points of perception that may not be so clear in the moment, with all of our judgment. Have you ever been to a church and you didn't judge somebody's clothes and what they're wearing and how the priest was talking? No. Right? So you enter the physical chapel of your vessel, of your body. So one of the easiest methods of prayer is utilizing the ally of your body temple. Because what happens when you enter the body temple, you bypass the mind, first of all, and you utilize, there are many different technologies, but on the basis of it all, you utilize movement, you utilize breath, you utilize the physiology of your body. Because what starts to happen when you enter the body temple is that it's out of the mind and it's into a concentration and I'm now getting those two words mixed up. What you consecrate as being holy, because now if we start to enter the body temple, if we practice observation and if we practice listening, the body temple will expose what it is we need to hear and feel. So we all know we feel as humans emotion, and we don't always want to feel what we feel. No, n'est-ce pas? Right? When you feel shitty or when you are kind of having flashbacks of some kind of trauma, we don't want to feel that, right? But the body temple is a technology that I teach all my clients, right, with our many different ways and doorways, but it's the doorway so that we can now collaborate with the very thing that is sort of blocking the door to moving towards what it is we want. Yeah? From the conscious to the deeper soul alignment, right? Because when you enter the body, that's the doorway and that's the connection and then that's the communication with your soul, right? Because how else is soul going to talk? It's going to talk through your body and feeling, and it's also going to talk in words. But the body temple is the container, right, for the spirit to be alive. And then it's the connection we have to our soul, which soul, and again, there's so many different definitions, but soul is that light that is kind of experiencing life at many different dimensions. And one of those dimensions is the body. It's the 3D world, right? Spirit is the thing that comes alive inside of that. Yeah. Okay, so that's the way I experience it. And so prayer needs to have some kind of 3D container. Body is your very first vessel, because you cannot experience the light without stepping into the portal of the body. We are humans and we experience through the physical body. We will experience our trauma. We will experience our core wounding through this physical body. And unless we actually surrender to that, which is another level of prayer, we will never ascend. It's kind of like acting holy and putting on all the thing that holds the spirit without coming onto the ground and knowing, well, we got to kind of set the foundation first. If that makes sense. And for me and for my clients, that foundation is, we got to look at our SHIT. We got to feel it. We got to experience it in the body. We have to see how it's showing up in the mind, and we have to see how it's energetically present in our energetic field, because that is always going to be put out from a subconscious level into our field, and it's going to be reflected back to us until we get the deeper prayer, right? And from that soul level, again, I just talked about a doorway, that soul level will constantly put experiences in front of us so that we can experience the deeper prayer that we came down here to experience. And so this experience with my father and I is like, that's the experience we had to go through, right? We had to go into the dark and the shadow, right? And it doesn't mean that just because you figure something out intellectually that it's acquired. And that's why we talk about practice, observation, right? And clarity. Okay, it's a circle. So another layer, there's two other layers of prayer that I want to talk about. One is collective prayer. What is our collective prayer? And I find this very interesting because we are magic manifestors, and sometimes we don't even realize it. It's like, you'll notice this, for me anyway, okay? I notice this with the weather, right? Okay, so it's like, let's say, for example, it is really hot, and we're not used to the hot. Oh my God, it's so hot. And then collectively, like, oh my God, I hate that fact that it's so hot. I wish it wasn't so hot. Maybe, like, I need some relief from the heat. And then all of a sudden, the next day it rains. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, it's raining. Like, there's collective, again, layers of unconscious prayer, conscious prayer, and deeper prayers. So collectively, on all these different layers, collectively, so the conscious and semi-conscious prayer is the human, right? So you'll notice that most humans that live in the same neighborhood will drive similar cars, will live in similar houses, will dress similarly. Why? Because that's the human semi-conscious prayer. Like, we maybe want that car so that we're not different from the tribe. Like, if everyone's house was blue and my house was the only pink one, we don't necessarily want to be on an instinctual level singled out as like, oh, look at that weird person that's living on the corner with the pink house. Sometimes once we're over these things, it doesn't matter. But you'll notice there's that human semi-conscious. Deeper prayer. You've all heard that the kingdom of heaven is within. That is literal. When we study the human vessel, it will give us, I always talk about the body being the encrypted code to life. So just to give you like one little example that I read recently in a book by Richard Rudd by the Gene Codes. On a collective basis, we're living in this one cell consciousness. The purpose of a cell is to survive at all costs. One single cell. That's kind of their journey here. And then when the collective cells realize, oh, okay, the collective cells now all intermingle and they work together to create this like majestic thing we call the body that like I'm talking right now and it's just a friggin' miracle because there's like trillions of functioning happening right now, right? We're switching from single cell consciousness to collective consciousness. Whereas like if we all work together, we'll all support each other. Okay, so again, the different layers, unconscious, conscious, semi-conscious, deeper prayers, and then we all have a soul contract here on earth, being human. Because essentially, again, we all come from the same creation, but we are just sort of separating so that consciousness, again, this is from my point of view, consciousness can experience each other, right? You might have heard in spiritual practice, I am you and you are me. And it is literal, but we are come here to, oh, okay, but what would it be? What would consciousness be like if I were to be able to experience myself in another? Oh, right? Instead of just being one and all, right? And then what if I had my points of view in many points of view, right? So somebody who's living in Australia and somebody living in Canada, their point of view of the earth is not the same. But yet when we share, if everyone shares their points of view, all of a sudden we get this collective consciousness that understands, ooh, maybe there's more to this. And maybe there's a soul prayer, right? And maybe then there's a life prayer, right? And life prayer is a mystery. We don't know what life truly is creating. we can guess, and that's the beauty and the mystery of it all. And that's where prayer can, we instead of thinking, oh, okay, life just is this thing and I have no kind of part in my own creation and destiny. Well, it is a container that connects us and helps us relate to the unseen realm and bring down the clarity of our own soul, the clarity of the collective prayer, and the clarity of life. But before we get that, we kind of have to come back here on earth. So we have to descend down before we ascend. It's like, again, just because you wear these holy robes and you wear a white hat or whatever it is that we deem as sacred, or we see in a symbol way, we have to look at our demons, right? So collectively, one of the reasons why so many things are being exposed in our world, and all of the sort of really dark things that happen in our human world, such as slavery, such as abuse, such as violence, is now what we sometimes think, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. No, it's we gotta see that darkness before we're going to ascend. So collectively, there is a deeper prayer that we're like, I think it's time to evolve from these darker consciousnesses. And again, that on a life level, like life is, well, that's just kind of how it works. You just kind of go down dark, you go down into the dirt to see the density before you kind of bring yourself up back into the light. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, let me see, what else did I talk about here? So that's it. So let me just kind of recap. I talked about the different levels of prayer: unconscious, conscious, unconscious, conscious, semi-conscious, which is the human world; deeper consciousness, which is what we're kind of what's aligned with our soul. The unconscious is what we're thinking about all the time, right? We don't realize we're constantly praying. So if we're just like, why is life is so hard, right? That's a prayer. So life is like, ooh, hard life. Oh, okay, let me show you. It's not, you see how it's not answering your prayer? That maybe when you say that you want life to be easy, but life is like, oh, why is life so hard? Okay, let me answer that question for you in an example, a real life example that you actually have to live through. And then there's a conscious, right, where it's like, okay, let's stay in survival mode, and like, okay, I need money, I need a car. And again, I'm not saying not to have those things. I'm just saying sometimes it's from that semi-conscious need to survive. And then there's the soul conscious, where sometimes things, it's the deeper prayer consciousness, where sometimes things get answered. But this is where observation is important, but they don't necessarily get answered in the way that you expect, right? So that's where observation comes from, and that's where practice comes from, because there's always ramifications when you pray. Yeah, even if you get what you want, okay, or even if you get what you don't want. And then there's the soul level, right? Like what I had with me and my dad. We're living out an experience that we both wanted to experience as humans in a body. There's collective, and again, collective will have its unconscious, conscious, unconscious, semi-conscious, soul, deeper prayers, so on and so forth. It's going to have its different layers, and we're seeing that how it's emerging now. And this is why our individual prayer practice is always affecting the whole, and the whole is always affecting the individuals. This is where we start to see that there is no separation. Okay, So whatever I am doing and whatever you're doing is going to affect each other. Yeah. So, and then I talked about the practice of prayer, body, temple being one. I didn't talk about other things, but the container, right, is what brings spirit down, and it creates a relationship and aliveness that's bringing down into the 3D. So the other thing I have is an altar, okay? I have different rituals in my house, right? And that, again, it's not just the things. It's what's you're charging those things with in your prayer. And it's creating a direct link and relationship to life itself. So when we concentrate with a certain object, this is a symbolic object. When I concentrate and I consecrate what I deem holy, this object, because spirit needs a container, has a container that I can tune into on the physical realm, in my body, in my nervous system, in my energy field. So last night, I sometimes get agitated when I'm not doing certain things for my body, when I'm not sleeping, when I kind of overstimulated. And I was so close to just going to bed because I was like, oh, but I just felt so agitated. I sat by my altar. I didn't feel like it, but as soon as I touched the charged objects that I deem sacred, the sacred objects that are blessed and holy, my nervous system tuned into a frequency that I've already created with that connection to life. So it's not just these little kind of trinkets that create a symbol and you're holy because you do it. It's the actual charge and intention behind it. And so your whole physical experience can be the container eventually. Yeah. So even the clothes I wear, the food I eat, all of that is the container for the spirit to enter. Yeah. And the funny thing about when life kind of hits us with, it knocks us down over and over and over again. The funny thing that starts to happen is that we, at a certain point, surrender. So, I just came back from a spiritual retreat, and then when I came back, I was kind of very sick, and all I can do was surrender to what was happening to me. And so what it did is it gave me my deeper prayer, which was I stayed in integration mode, which was a lot of rest. My energetic force field wasn't interacted with so much stimulation. And it just caused me to continue to stay in the ceremony of things because I had to move slow. I had time to connect with the things I deem sacred. Yeah. So there's that. So that is my summary. The practice, there needs to be a process of clarity. I talked about utilizing the body to gain clarity. That practice can look like so many different ways. It could be movement, it could be breathing, it could be meditation, but it's going to come through the body, right? And practice. So the very fact that, just sitting by the altar was a point, an anchor that anchored me into the practice. There's many things that can anchor you into your practice. So you'll want things that anchor you into the practice so that you anchor into what you deem sacred and you tune into that. So that could be your body, that could be your altar, that could be your necklace, it could be a place, it could be a tree, it could be outside in nature. Yeah. Okay, whatever you deem sacred. It could be your animal, flowers. Yes? observation, right? Then we observe. Now, this is my last point I want to just make. When we have prayers, we also have to be willing to receive. So sometimes we pray and 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 then we get what we want, but we get so caught up in the prayer of it all that sometimes life is like, here, I'm giving it to you. And we don't see it and we're not able to receive it. So that's why the practice of clarity is so important. Because sometimes you get exactly what you want and you don't even realize. Sometimes you get the partner that you want who maybe is, supporting your spiritual practice, like my dad who supports me in his spiritual practice in his human way, but I'm not getting it in the way I expect. Do you see that? So this is where observation comes in. We have to have that clarity. We have to have that practice of knowing what we want clearly. And when we ask for it, seeing how it kind of comes to us in many ways that we don't expect. And life is always giving you these little hints. Okay? Life is always giving you little hints of magic. I'll give you just one little kind of more, let's say, magical thing, which is not related to a human. I have this huge pine tree outside of my house. And it's huge. It's like so big. It's bigger than our house. And I've been consecrating with it. I've been concentrating on it. I've been communing with its spirit. And one night I was like, okay, tree, big brother I call it because it's so big, take me in my dreams where I need to go. That's my first night communicating and consecrating with it. And so I didn't, you expected me to see it in my dreams. I didn't see anything in my dreams. But I told my friend who offers this beautiful meditation practice every week, I said, I'm coming to your meditation practice tonight. And she said, ooh, great, because I dreamt about you last night. So if I was, whatever, intellectual, whatever, I just, But again, that's life giving you what it is you're praying for. And just these little sparks. Sometimes it hits you in the face with something very obvious that could be traumatic or blissful. It could be one or the other. Or sometimes it's just this little life. Your relationship with life is being heard. There is a commune. There is a communication. Yeah? So that's the last point. The observation gives us our ability to receive. Because sometimes it's right in front of us, but it's not what we expect, so we don't actually receive it. And life will continue to give it to you until, well, you can never receive it if you don't want, or you could receive it. Yeah? So that's the last thing, because I think that one's really important, because we can pray and practice and pray and practice, and then we get so caught up with the practice of it all that we don't actually receive it. And it's always going to most likely be received in the way you don't expect. So that's the part that's important. Right? All right. I really hope that this practice of prayer and the many layers of prayer and practice was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments, what is your biggest takeaway? What for you resonated? What is it that for you is like gave you that insight that related to your own life? What is your prayer practice? I want to hear it. And how did this training maybe give you some light bulbs or some insight or some, oh my God, this is what I thought about when you said this, or oh my gosh, I saw it this way now that we, discussed that. So I want to know. And if any of this resonates with you, with my clients, what I always do is we do a body practice, we do a mind practice, we do an energy practice to get us to the prayer of what we want our life to be like and what we want our business to be like. And to get us in that alignment with our own truth. So if that resonates with you, then DM me and let me know, Jamie, I'm ready for a breakthrough yoga coaching call. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you an application. And on that application, you're going to send me your prayer. You're going to send me the things that you think is going wrong. And I'm going to look at your deeper prayer. Right? I'm going to see what's blocking you, what you think you might need. More money, more clients, more marketing, more social media presence. And what's blocking you so that we can now implement those very practical things, but more from a place of clarity now. More from a place of deeper resonance, so that when you put it out into the world, it becomes more of a magnet versus a, oh, please, 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 just let me have this kind of thing. And we've all been there. It's not a judgment. I've been there myself, and I'm there a lot. But the more we practice and the more we observe, the more we start to realize we become a resonating field, and that resonance in those thought waves become matter. So that's how it works. It becomes a wave into matter. And the more we concentrate and we realize what we deem as holy, that's what reflects back to us. So DM me, and also my Calendly link is in the comments. You can see me there, and please feel free if you have any questions. I'm very happy to answer you. If you're here for the replay, #replay. If you're here for the live, #live. I want to hear from you. Thank you so much. I will see you next week, 11 a.m. and have a blessed day. I pray that life offers you clarity, that you have a devotional practice that works for you, and you can observe and receive everything that your heart and your soul calls in. See you next week. Bye, guys.